Hello, everybody. This is Susan Kokinda. Today is September 25th, and this is your midweek update. Yesterday marked the 6-week countdown to the November 5th election, and of course, absentee ballots and early voting are already underway in a number of states, including key swing states. What I'm going to talk about today is the following apparent paradox. We have to win the battle immediately before us. But like any great general, and George Washington comes to mind, we must always have in mind the entire war and what the shape of ultimate victory must be. An ultimate victory in this war is breaking the control of the globalists and reestablishing the United States as the leading sovereign republic in the world, free of imperial control, free of central banking, globalization, free trade, and perpetual wars. So while Donald Trump and his running mate are obviously focused on November 5th, they are also thinking beyond November 5th. In his recent Milwaukee town hall with Tucker Carlson, J.D. Vance brought up the question of what Donald Trump could be facing after an election victory. First, he asked the question, what's going to happen when we start to deport over 20 million illegals? He didn't elaborate, but you can bet that the elites have plenty of operations ready to go to create chaos. But then he brought up the danger of a bond market collapse, which is a real possibility, given the de facto bankruptcy of the United States under the recent regimes of money printing, zero interest rates, and budget deficits. He pointed out that the government of Prime Minister Liz Truss in Great Britain was brought down in just 6 weeks by the Bank of England, which manipulated interest rates to destroy her government. Now, JD did point out that we don't have the same form of government as a British parliamentary system, in which it's a lot easier to bring down a government, but the principle is the same. What he was really saying is that the new Trump administration will be right up against the Federal Reserve and the global financier elite, potentially right out of the box. He said that if something like this happens, Trump will have to make some tough decisions to defend the country, and that some of the biggest pushback might come from the Republican Party. The implication is obvious. It's that what I call the Wall Street and war wing of the Republican Party is going to push back against Trump if they have enough power to do so. And I'm going to come back to that later in this discussion. I wanted to highlight that because it shows that Trump and some of his team are thinking like George Washington about winning the war. But it also remains the case, as it did in the Revolutionary War, that we have to win the immediate battle. The first immediate battle is to keep Donald Trump alive. Senate Homeland Security Committee today issued a scathing report on Secret Service failures in Butler. In our Monday strategic overview, Barbara Boyd presented an in-depth picture of the higher levels of the who and the why behind the ongoing live assassination danger, and made clear that just giving the Secret Service more money is not going to cut it. We have to demand that President Trump gets military-style, special services, special forces-style protection immediately. And we will be keeping you updated on that fight on the Promethean Action website, so please subscribe. The next immediate battle is to hold off World War III, a danger which Trump repeats more than once in every speech he gives. When he was in Flint recently, he was asked by an auto worker, what is the biggest danger to Michigan and manufacturing? And Trump insisted that the biggest danger to everything is nuclear war. Now, the pressure is on the current administration, coming from Britain, from the neocons, and from the inside, from Anthony Blinken, to allow Ukraine to strike deep into Russia with long-range missiles. This is the most obvious nuclear flashpoint. But the expansion of the war in the Mideast is perhaps even more incalculable, taking on a kind of Frankenstein character. The fact that Trump, before he is even elected, is meeting with world leaders such as his recent meeting with the Emir and the Prime Minister of Qatar, highlights the fact that he represents the potential for reason and peace even before his hoped-for return to the White House. And that does kind of cycle back to the importance of keeping Donald Trump alive. On the other hand, you have the war faction out in force in the United States. Zelensky is campaigning for Harris. He was flown on a military transport, and he went to a munitions factory, which produces artillery rounds, with the governor of Pennsylvania. The whole thing had a kind of macabre Dr. Strangelove vibe to it. You also had the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, come to the United States. Both he and Zelensky are here because the UN General Assembly is now meeting. Khan gave an interview to Politico where he urged the American people to vote for Kamala Harris. And he said, when people are listening to Trump and Vance, do they realize it's a lie? And he drilled down on the fact that the current administration, Kamala Harris, support things like the climate change agenda and the continued expansion of NATO. So you have the war machine and the city of London literally weighing in on this race. And that brings us to the third immediate battle, delivering an avalanche of votes to Trump to ensure a decisive victory on November 5th, so decisive that there can be no doubt as to the outcome. Now, there have been several big developments on that front this week. The Teamsters, of course, announced the poll of their members, which showed 60% support for Trump. While not endorsing Trump directly, the non-endorsement of Democrat Harris is a bellwether of what is happening in blue-collar America. We see it all the time in our deployments to auto plants, where auto workers are reporting to us that support in their individual plants is anywhere from 50 to 75% of what is supposed to be a Democratic Party base. And what is driving this blue-collar shift is the layoffs, some of which were just announced by Stellantis in Michigan. Donald Trump, in his speech in Savannah, Georgia yesterday, made the point that last month, American-born workers lost 1.3 million jobs versus 600,000 jobs picked up by immigrants. The other big bombshell reflecting this shift is here in Michigan, where I am, and it's the endorsement of Trump by the mayor of Hamtramck, Amir Ghalib. Hamtramck is a poor city surrounded by Detroit, which has a very large Muslim Arab American population, and they have an entirely Arab American Muslim city council. Ghalib's endorsement is a significant break in this community, 100,000 of which voted uncommitted in the primaries, most of whom will not vote for Kamala Harris. Some will vote third party. But with Mayor Ghalib taking the next step and endorsing Trump, this is going to have a big impact. Ghalib pointed to the fact that Trump has the ability to end the chaos in the Mideast. And in his endorsement statement, he said, President Trump and I may not agree on everything, but I know he is a man of principle. I believe he is the right choice for this critical time. I will not regret my decision no matter what the outcome would be, and I'm ready to face the consequences. Now let the caravan begin its journey. This is just the starting point. So what you are seeing is the emergence of a new Republican Party, which begins to get at the question of both winning the immediate battle and actually winning the war. That is, ensuring Trump is elected in such a way that he can govern and that he can take the fight to the enemy and prevail. And this gets to the question of the realignment in the Republican Party, which is outlined in the platform, which asserts that the party must return to its roots as the party of industry, manufacturing, infrastructure, and workers. This new formation will bring together the productive layers of society and all of those who would like to be productive, and know that they have to put Trump back in the White House to create an economy which will allow them to be productive. Again, this is the basis for victory in November and beyond. Now, I want to highlight another discussion which J.D. Vance had with Tucker Carlson, which I think puts this in the sharpest focus. This was in their discussion in Hershey, Pennsylvania this last weekend. Vance and Carlson made more explicit than anyone besides us of the dramatic realignment going on. Vance said, "For 40 years, we haven't had an opposition party. Now we do." So let's do a little math here. 40 years. That takes you back to 1984. Actually, that's pretty funny. 1984. A few weeks ago in my midweek update, I talked about the George Orwell nature of the Democratic Party. But what was 1984? It was the second term of Ronald Reagan, which was unfortunately increasingly dominated by the Bush-Cheney faction, which led to the first Bush presidency. And we know where it went from there. The last 40 years have seen the Uniparty interchanging its parts for placement in the White House and in the Congress. That has now come full circle, as the following exchange between Tucker and Vance shows.
So just to put it in one sentence, you got Bobby Kennedy, and they got Dick Cheney and his horrible daughter.
A hell of a trade, by the way. Right. I'll take that trade every day and twice on Sunday.
And I didn't mean to, I can't remember her name, so I'm going to go with horrible daughter. I think it's fair. How would you describe that realignment? Like, what is that?
Well, I think there are a couple things going on. So first of all, if you spend any time in professional Washington, which I've spent a couple years there, you realize that one of the things that gives a lot of people meaning is like playing a chess game with the lives of other people's children, right? And of course, if you think like that, you're kind of a sicko and you shouldn't be anywhere near power. But Washington is full of people who really like to go out and play strategic games with the lives of other people's children. And there's probably nobody who better represents that, of course, than Liz and Dick Cheney, who their entire politics for the past 30 years has been using American power to inflame tensions in the world, to draw the United States deeper and deeper into foreign conflicts, which either shouldn't exist at all, or certainly the United States shouldn't have any business in. And I think that I think so that's one thing that's going on, is if you don't think the United States should get involved in every stupid war in the world, then you're a Republican. And if you think the United States should send billions of dollars and tons of innocent Americans to die in some foreign country, then you're going to be a Democrat. And that's kind of crazy, right? Because it was sort of exactly the opposite probably 40, 50 years ago.
So after this back and forth, J.D. went on to say that when you challenge this ossified, broken ruling class, there is hell to pay. And he said, without Donald Trump, the Republican Party would be broken. He fixed it. And he said, we've been given the opportunity to build something which will be durable and work for the long haul. And he made the point that he endorsed Trump very early because he knew that the 2024 primaries and ultimately the election would come down to the old guard versus a pro-worker, pro-America party. Now, the content of that realignment is, as we've stressed, the Republican Party platform, which breaks from the Bush-Cheney policies of Wall Street and war. And of course, it rejects the lunacy of the Democrats. And it reestablishes the Republican Party as the party of working people. Promethean PAC has produced a half-page flyer which draws out the key elements of the new Republican Party on the economy, immigration, and foreign policy. You can see the front side of that flyer here. The back side lists the 20 promises which the platform makes and which undergird Donald Trump's commitment to the people of this country. You can find out more about this at Promethean Action. So this has been your Midweek Update. Thanks for listening.
Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.